The Big Con Grift of the Year Edition. I have to first off say this. I do know that some games sell themselves, but I would have to wager most of you have no idea what this title is or what the gameplay is. Maybe it's a visual novel, or it's a platformer, or even a simulation game. Well, it's none of those. But the description on Nintendo's website wouldn't help you. This is it in its entirety. Hustle your way across the 90s as a runaway teen con artist. Choose how you make your scratch as you don disguises, pickpockets, and rip people off in this comedic, crime-filled adventure. That's a description the publisher decided to choose to get people excited about this game. It has to be one of the most I don't give a if you ever play this game. There isn't even a video trailer. It consists of 7 pictures, and one of those is the title screen. Even the Steam page has 3 sentences, and if you scroll down, it gives you information about how you play the game. There is no reason this couldn't have been put in the actual Nintendo description. It feels like an almost carbon copy paste job of the Steam page, but they just forgot to add the rest. Now, to be fair, on the eShop itself, they add a 3rd sentence. Grift your way through the totally rad 90s in all its plaid and payphone glory. So they did elaborate a little bit more on the eShop itself. It's too bad that sentence is just as unhelpful as the others. Even some of the more questionable games on the Switch's platform, like the pizza delivery boy who saved the world, has a trailer and more than 2 sentences describing the game. And for the people out there watching my reviews for the very first time going, this guy really spent the first couple minutes talking about the description? Anyone who watches my videos go, yep. That's him. He loves to nitpick and go off on tangents. Now let's talk about the game itself. I want to tell you, it's not a bad game, but it's not great either. It's really sitting in the middle, but I would say a little bit over the top of the middle, if that makes any sense. But it gets very repetitive at times. This is sort of a point-and-click adventure game. You really don't point at anything, but nowadays it's more like walk-and-click adventure game. It's very simple, and you should finish it in a few hours. The last one of these games that I played was like the new Monkey Island game, which was great. Now the story is about a person named Allie, who is an employee at her mom's video rental store, and she finds out her mom has taken a loan for a little over $97,000, and she only has a few days now to pay it back. She meets up with a criminal who teaches her how to pickpocket and steal from people. This sounds like a really good guy. She decides to travel around the country looking for the big score, which will get her the money she needs while stealing and scamming people along the way. This sounds interesting enough, but it does become very repetitive. You'll get to a section where you'll solve some very simple puzzles to scam people. You make some money and then you move on to the next part. All this while you're pickpocketing anyone you see. But this is done by doing a mini game where you have to put the arrow inside the area that they want you to. It got so dull doing this over and over again, I turned it off. Yes, you can actually turn off the minigame in this. There are a lot of accessibility options so you can play this any way you want. You can turn on invincibility in the minigames and auto-win the pickpocketing minigames. It had a very interesting art style. It was very cartoonish. It felt like an old cartoon you might see on TV, and that kind of helped with the 90s vibe. You will always pickpocket everyone in the area, and that got pretty repetitive. The cons that you run were more interesting, but the solutions were always so obvious. There were side missions which you could do, which were nice. It had you exploring every part of the locations and clicking on everyone. There were a couple of side missions I actually liked, and one of the plot points I thought was clever. But for the most part, it was a very paint-by-numbers story. I liked the different locations they took us to, as it was mostly varied. However, it was just basically the same gameplay in different locations. But the change in scenery was welcome. The locations most of the time were fairly small, with the exception of the final part. In the final part, they open up the world a little bit, and in this part, I actually had issues with the Switch crashing. It happened twice in this part alone. The Big Con Grift of the Year edition was okay. It had an interesting art style, but the repetitiveness of the gameplay got annoying after about an hour. I thought it would do more with the concept, but it kept just doing the same thing. They do change it up a little bit in the end, but at that point, it's a little too late. This is normally $14.99. I would say wait for it to go on sale. It's not bad, but it's not great either. If you can find this for about half of that, and you want to play a simple adventure game with only as much challenge as you want to put up with, this might be a fun game to play. But wait for it to go on sale.